However, to quote former Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, I am against judicial reform driven by nakedly partisan reasoning. There are commonly discussed reform options that do include various considerations, such as increasing the length of the judicial term, increasing the qualifications of the judicial candidate, an alternative to the elected judiciary, concerted voter education programs, public financing, and recusal standards. My opponent, first of all, takes credit for a plan that he is promoting. This plan has been examined and has been rejected. His plan to do a cumulative has also been reviewed and been rejected. This issue, the perception, the reality, and the solution, will not be meaningfully addressed in a political campaign, nor should it be. In fact, the goal of groups such as Impact Ohio, the American Judicature Society, and Justice at Stake believe that what we need to do is guarantee the appearance of propriety and the reality of an independent and an impartial judiciary. However, even these groups have not agreed upon a successful or universal plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice O'Connor. Judge Russo, I believe you have 4 minutes.
Thank you, and I can't tell you how thrilled I am that my opponent has finally decided that she will embrace my plan, at least look at it. I again disagree with any possibility of a task force or any further study of it, but I've been waiting this whole campaign for her to finally suggest that there was a problem, that she was willing to deal with it. I would say accept my plan. Push your other folks that are currently considering the rules on the court to accept it as well. It's time. It's high time. And since it's the only plan that's been produced since 1912 with regard to this issue in the state of Ohio, it's high time that she finally came around to my way of thinking. I would be remiss if I didn't at least give you a little bit of background on me. I'm the son of a mother who grew up in the projects and a father who's an iron worker who died when I was 12 years old. I'm a lifelong Clevelander. I graduated from Case Western Reserve University for both undergraduate and law school, where I now serve as an adjunct professor of law. I work for myself, representing workers who'd been discriminated against. I then beat a 2-term incumbent Republican, you may all remember, Patty Cleary, and was reelected without opposition, receiving a perfect score of excellent from every bar association in Judge for Yourself. As a judge, I've handled over 7,000 civil and criminal cases, including 7 death penalty cases, and I have 4 pending right now, so it'll be 11 before I'm done. I'm married to my lovely wife, Diana, for 15 years. We have 2 children, Gabriella, 11, and Joe, who's every bit of 4. I am gratified to be endorsed in the first time and with my ideas that I put forward by several organizations. First by elected officials, Governor Ted Strickland, Lieutenant Governor Lee Fisher, Senator Sherrod Brown, and various officials across the state. As far as the bar associations, which to us are really the most important, the Ohio State Bar Association gave me as a first-time candidate the recommended rating, the same as my opponent, and I was excited and very enlightened by that entire process of going in front of a group of 36 folks you don't know and being questioned in all manner of ways as you go through it. I then went before Judge for Yourself and received 2 excellents and 2 good ratings for a rating of 3.5 out of 4.0. For those of you that are interested in that, it's www.judgeforyourself.com. My opponent interviewed the same day, received 1 good rating, 2 adequates, and 1 not recommended for a 1.75 out of 4.0 rating. I doubled her rating. We're still waiting on a few papers, and I'll tell you it's often hard to receive many newspaper endorsements the first time you run, but I have received the Dayton Daily News and the Athens News endorsements thus far. And although the Plain Dealer endorsed my opponent in what they called a close call for 2 highly qualified candidates, they still stated, and I quote, Russo has thoughtful ideas about curbing campaign contributors' potential influence on the court's decision-making. His ability and temperament leave little doubt he would be a good justice. As all of you know, that is high praise indeed from our paper, especially for a first-time candidate. I've also been endorsed by unions throughout the state AFL-CIO, the North Shore AFL-CIO, the SEIU, the Teamsters, the UAW, the Ohio Education Association, the Ohio Federation of Teachers, AFSCME, OESCA, OAPSE, and the Cleveland Building and Construction Trades, among many others. I'm sincerely honored to have been endorsed by these groups, and I'll make them proud that they endorsed me. We have very, very different views on this issue. My opponent has raised last time went out, raised $1.8 million, $200,000 coming from insurance companies, plus an additional $2.2 million that was put into her campaign by Chamber of Commerce based interest groups that ran commercials and helped her out. And finally, she also took money from the Noe family. And after he was indicted twice, convicted twice, and sentenced twice, finally returned his money, but not his family's. So I still say that the perception problem is here. I have offered an opportunity and a way to change it, and I look forward to changing that as justice on the Supreme Court. Thank you.
Justice O'Connor, Mr. Foster advises me you have 30 seconds. Blame it on him.
That comment has often been said to people who have come before me on the bench. I take issue, obviously, with what my opponent says. What I find a little disconcerting and somewhat ironic is to look on my opponent's webpage. Cuyahoga County judge opposes first-term justice. Challenger decries perceived influence of campaign cash. Below, how can I help? Contribute to the campaign. Campaign donations may be eligible for tax credits. The reality is, ladies and gentlemen, we all have to raise dollars in order to run. And that is just a fact of life. And I agree that there is a perception out there, but my opponent does not have a universally accepted response to the issue, as much as he may say so. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice O'Connor and Judge Russo. Now Mr. Foster will return to the podium for a few brief City Club announcements.
Thank you, Dean. Today at the City Club, we are listening to a debate between the candidates for Ohio Supreme Court. Now we would like to proceed with the question and answer period of our debate. Holding the microphones today are City Club Assistant Director of Development, Marcella Brown, and Outreach Coordinator, Deborah Agosti. Let's return to Dean Geoff Mearns.
Thank you, Jim. As he said, we will now have the traditional City Club question and answer period. Questions that are addressed to a specific candidate will enable that candidate to have 1 minute to respond. The other candidate will then have 30 seconds to reply. Questions that are addressed to both candidates who are a toss-up, then each candidate will have 1 minute. As the moderator, the City Club has authorized me to maybe ask some follow-up questions or to ask some clarifications. But before we begin with those questions, I do have one additional request for each of you. And I make this request not only on behalf of the City Club, but on behalf of everyone who is here. And that is, when you're asking a question, please do just that. Ask a question as opposed to a speech punctuated by a question. I appreciate your cooperation, and I'm sure the candidates will as well. So with that, let's begin with the first question, please.
Good afternoon, candidates. When judicial candidates run for office, they are hampered by the fact that they cannot be openly political or take political stands on issues. It leaves the electorate short sometimes to know who the best candidate is. Other than the issue of integrity, which of course we want all of our judicial candidates to have integrity and not be able to be influenced or bought. Other than that issue, what is your philosophical view that affects your decision-making as a judge, and I ask this specifically as a Supreme Court judge, if Judge Russo would be elected. What philosophical view do you bring? Judge Russo indicated that the two of yours is very different, so I ask that to both of you.
Judge Russo, why don't you begin with a minute, and then Justice O'Connor.
Sure, actually. Check. Okay, there we go. Actually, my philosophy with regard to being a Supreme Court justice would be a philosophy of judicial restraint.